It didn't matter that he did that, except that that invasion cost 1 million Afghan lives. And that's how it's possible for a few to dictate the direction of the world, with the many working every day unknowingly to do it for them. And so, one name that is given to these families is the Illuminati, the illuminated ones. They know more than we do because they keep what they know from us. And behind the corporations, different masks on the same face, is actually a corporation. Different directors, different frontmen, not always, mind, interconnected directorships, but at control in the hands of the few. And it's the same with politics. Presidents, prime ministers, heads of the World Bank, Secretary General of NATO, they are perceived to be in the red bit at the top in terms of their own hierarchy. No, no. They're some way down. I'm probably being optimistic with this. They are there. That here today, come tomorrow, people that I mentioned earlier are there simply to fill the public positions through which those that operate in the shadows above them in the pyramid dictate the policy. And that's why the policy never changes, no matter what government's in power, an incessant centralization. Tell people, if they say no to just one thing, say no to the microchip. Because he said even those that are becoming aware of it, and this is way back, this is like I say 97, and some were, most weren't, think it's about electronic tagging, and on one level he said it is. He said, but the real reason for microchipping is because once you've got a microchip inside you, you can be electronically connected to a computer system that can manipulate you physically, take you out from a distance, that can manipulate you emotionally, because the body's an electrochemical entity. You get hold of the body, access the body chemically or electrically, you can do mayhem. And when we feel emotion or think, it is an electrochemical process. So if you get a microchip inside you manipulating that process, they can manipulate the way you think. As he said, they can make people aggressive, they can make people docile, either as an individual or en masse. You basically become a robot, he was saying. Say no to the microchip. Fear. Fear, the four-letter word that controls the world. Once you get people in fear, they will look outside of themselves for people or organizations to protect them from what they have been manipulated to fear. Fear is the greatest of all mass mind manipulation techniques. Because of fear, we have this introduced, justified by what I've been talking about. This is a poster from Germany in 1934. That's a poster from London today.
It is very important to understand that when you fear loss, fear death, fear war, fear terrorism, or fear change, you are giving others the ability to control you based on those fears. When you fight against poverty or against racism, when you fight for relationships or for freedom, you are outwardly attempting to repress that which has been placed before you to conquer inwardly. These situations are mirrors of our fears. This is why it is important to love and only love. Love those who stand with you, but especially those who stand against you. Don't look at your fears as a threat. Rather understand that this material world is only a physical manifestation of either the love or fear in your consciousness.
We're going through a sieve here. Wheat from the chaff, sheep from the goats. Exactly as prophesied, exactly on time. We're going to go through the eye of the needle, folks. And you don't get through that eye in comfort. I bet you've noticed things falling off, haven't you? First, all kinds of considerations about who you are or who you should be. Those things have fairly well dissipated, or you wouldn't be in this room. Maybe some job positions, maybe a relationship or two, have just sort of peeled off. Expect a lot more of that.
The CIA scientist told me in 1997, when no one was talking about nanotechnology, that the microchips outside of the public arena in the secret projects were so small they can be inserted in a hypodermic needle during vaccination programs. And of course the people giving the vaccination have no idea that that's the case. Aspartame is a sugar substitute. Have a look for this if you haven't come across it. It's in virtually everything now. And aspartame is a excitotoxin, they call it. It excites brain cells and destroys them. It stops the brain working efficiently. They sent letters out to naval pilots in America a few years ago telling them not to drink soft drinks with aspartame in before they fly because it affects their brain's ability to think and sharp. And who brought aspartame into existence? Donald Rumsfeld. He was head of Searle Pharmaceuticals. They couldn't get aspartame through the Food and Drug Administration checks in America to become part of, the food that we eat and drink. And so they appointed him because he was close friends with the Reagan-Bush administration, and the Reagan-Bush administration changed the head of the Food and Drug Administration when he came in, and suddenly the checks were forgotten and aspartame came out. And Monsanto now control aspartame as they control GM food. Fluoride in the water is an excitotoxin. It excites brain cells, destroys them, and it suppresses thought. The first known time that fluoride was put into water supplies was in the Nazi concentration camps to keep the people docile. Genetically modified food is designed to genetically modify us. Vaccines, 25 vaccinations before the age of 2, with a growing, still developing immune system. All the stuff they give us, electromagnetic soup, the rabbit hole is seriously deep.
I think that it's all about keeping the clamp on. They're trying to keep the clamp on so that people cannot become more conscious and take back their rights as human beings.
And also it's like as the whole mainstream kind of narrative is becoming more and more like a sort of toxic cartoon, for anybody who has a kind of intelligence, they have to at a certain point just begin to question this. It's like if you read the New York Times every day and that's your vision of reality, there's just like no hope for you. I mean, there's just nothing left in that thing to hang on to. So, it's just going to be a very polarizing situation for the next few years.
All propaganda must be so popular on such an intellectual level that even the most stupid of those towards whom it is directed will understand it. People can be made to perceive paradise as hell and the other way round, to consider the most wretched sort of life a paradise. On the basic intellectual level, it's the terrorists, and we've got to protect you from the terrorists, so we've got to take your freedoms away so we can protect your freedom. Oh, that sounds good, I'll vote for him.
That there are real beings out there who have a real effect on what's happening here. And these positive forces, it's my understanding, are guiding us through an evolution on the planet. And they basically want to make sure that it doesn't break. They want to make sure that things stay as clean as they possibly can right up to 2012, which is when this apparent dimensional shift event happens. And so there is a very deliberate effort being made to thwart and to offset those kinds of negative future possibilities. That's why, like, for example, AlMartinRaw.com had this whole whistleblower thing that came out about how the Bush administration was planning to put in fake weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, because if they could have found, and they even said it on the news, remember that? We know there's 10,000 gallons of anthrax and da-da-da-da, and it's right there in Tikrit around Baghdad, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's because that's where they're going to put it.
Yeah.
But then what happens is somebody else finds out they're going to do this fake thing, and then they go and frag the team that does it and kill them on friendly fire. And now they're out there somewhere, nobody knows where the hell they are. So the point is that all these little things keep happening, which appear to be random, but they're guided by higher intelligence to ensure that these bad things don't happen.
The whole facade of civilization is just coming down. We want to defend it with bombs and wars and so on, but that's not all that's going to do is further the process of it coming down. It's all inevitable. So the point is, we have the opportunity. How many people in the world are for peace? And how many people in the world really are for war? If everyone in the world who exists in the world is for peace could understand this point, that we can all have peace if we unify and change the time and say, that's it. We're going into a new time. We're going from a time of war to a time of peace. We're going from a time of fear to a time of love. We're going from a time of chaos to a time of harmony. We're going to solve our problems ourselves, and we're going to enter a new time that is going to reorganize our mind, that's going to reorganize how we function in the world, that's going to reorganize our priorities. Rather than building more things, we want to repair the damage.
In the year 2000, in America, an organization set up in the 90s by the people who controlled the Bush administration this last 8 years was set up. It was called the Project for the New American Century, and it was created by people who have since become known as neocons or neoconservatives. September 2000 they published this, and it was called Rebuilding America's Defenses, Strategies, Forces and Resources for a New Century. This is what it said. I'll come to that. These are three main people who were in the creation of the Project for the New American Century. Dick Cheney, Vice President, more power than the President. Donald Rumsfeld, Defense Secretary at the time of 9/11 and the invasion of Iraq. Paul Wolfowitz, Defense Deputy Secretary at the same time. 1 year after that document was published, 9 months after the people that wrote it came to power in the Bush administration, America had what Bush described at the time as our Pearl Harbor. And everything that has happened since 9/11, that has unfolded off the pages of that document quite demonstrably, has been justified by 9/11. Even academics that rubbished it to start with are saying the official story doesn't make sense. You've got pilot organizations that are saying, pilots against 9/11 and stuff, who were saying there's no way those people who couldn't fly Cessnas could do what they did with those planes. Endless people now. There are engineers organizations against 9/11 who are pointing out that those buildings could never have collapsed as they did because of fire and steel. But no one investigates it.
So when those towers went down, it doesn't matter whether it was actually terrorists or who did it, how it happened, why it happened. It happened. It happened. It inevitably happened. It was the nerve center, the pineal gland of the technosphere was taken out.
And the technosphere has to evolve if the planet's going to survive.
Well,
it has to evolve back into harmony.
It has to evolve back, and so that point there, that puncture, that was a big puncturing of the technosphere. So now there's a lot of retrograde, regressive action to try to maintain it, but it's not going to hold because the biosphere is in danger, the global warming, everything else. So what you're seeing is like the technosphere is slowly going to be coming down. It's not pretty, but it's coming down because it's not the truth. It's not natural. It's not the truth. It exists at the expense of the biosphere. It exists at the expense of the Amazonian rainforest. It exists at the expense of the different species and everything. So it's inevitable. It's coming down. That's why it's called. This is why this is called the end time. And it's coming down because we're headed to 2012. So the point is that we have to just say, hey, it's coming down. No matter how many flags you fly, it's still coming down. So we're saying, instead of flying flags, let's see what else we can do. Let's see if we can do something about it. And the Mayan prophecies say, yes, you can do something about it. Just change your timing frequency, get back with the big universal evolutionary program. You just took a big detour from evolutionary mainstream. You caused yourself a lot of suffering, and some people might be well off from this, but a lot of other people are suffering more and more every day, and you're playing with very dangerous toys to protect a crumbling facade.
Well, I think that we do create our own realities, and to boil it down to a simple decision, it's great to be informed about what's really going on, first of all, and that must be said. But we can't succumb to the fear-mongering tactics that are being tossed around, because We can succumb to fear and close up, but really what needs to happen so that we can create a good reality is to open up to the real possibilities. In other words, to open up and be guided by what we might call higher principles or a higher vision, of the future. So instead of being consumed with reacting in fear or combating all the crap that the controllers are trying to throw at us, somehow we need to transcend that and open up our minds to the highest possible future and then create that together.